Hope you had a weekend, a nice weekend. Boy, it seems strange having a weekend that's not a 3-day weekend. I feel like I've been ripped off somehow of a day. And now we have to work 5 days here this week. Doesn't seem fair. You have midterm number 2 coming up today during the laboratory session. Hopefully you did some good studying for it. We're on the chapter now on energy and metabolism, but remember that will not be on the midterm today. But it will be on the quiz that you'll take the Friday afternoon, the Friday quiz in this class that you'll take on Friday. Well, let's see. Let's do a bit of review and then pick up where we left off. One of the major concepts from last time was that, well, what we're exploring is how cells store up energy. Here we go. Just like you like to have a fully charged batteries in your whatever devices they are, full tank of gas in your car, you want to store up energy for your needs. Cells are the same way. They want to store up energy. We call stored energy potential energy. And there's 2 major ways the cells do it, by having something called a concentration gradient across the membrane, which we mostly covered last week. And then here in a moment we'll start in on this new one. Another way cells store up energy is chemical potential energy, also called high-calorie molecules. But let's just do a brief recap of that one. The idea here is that the membranes of cells, imagine this black line as a cell membrane. The membranes of cells are barriers to most solutes. Think of it like a dam that can stop solutes from moving past. And if these are solute molecules that are at a higher concentration on one side of the membrane than the other, then these solutes have a natural tendency by diffusion to want to move from the high concentration area to the low concentration area. The same way that water wants to spontaneously move from a high elevation area to a low elevation area. So the membranes of the cell can act like dams to stop the diffusion, and that's storing up potential energy. When the cell wants to tap into that potential energy, that's stored up in this concentration gradient across the membrane, the most common way the cell does it is like this. There are these proteins that you can find in a cell membrane called transport proteins, or channels they're sometimes called. And it's a protein that essentially makes a tube through the membrane, just like a spillway going through the dam. And then what will happen then is, by diffusion, these solute molecules will move from the high concentration side to the low concentration side. They'll just come barreling through there because of diffusion. And the cell can tap into their kinetic energy as they go zipping on through. What actually typically happens is that there's this protein that is a transport protein is also an enzyme that can take ATP, or I should say can take adenosine diphosphate, ADP, plus inorganic phosphate, and using the energy of the solutes zooming on through like that, can link that last phosphate onto the adenosine diphosphate and make an ATP reaction. Now that's a non-spontaneous reaction that requires energy, but it gets the energy from these solutes barreling through the transport protein. Now focusing on here for this transport protein for a moment. Anytime you have a situation like that where the solutes are moving from their high concentration side of the membrane to their low concentration side of the membrane by going through a transport protein like you see there. Anytime you have that situation, that is called passive transport or facilitated diffusion, where you have diffusion of solutes through the membrane with the aid of a transport protein. And typically it's coupled to ATP synthesis. Like we see here. And I didn't put this on the chart here, but the actual name of this protein that does this is called ATP synthase. ATP synthase is a transport protein, but it's also an enzyme that can link ADP to PI using the energy of the solutes that are passing through. And in some instances, the cell will need to move the solutes in the opposite direction from their low concentration side to their high concentration side. The cell wants to move this one from there to there. You can't rely on diffusion to do that because that's the wrong direction. This is going to be a non-spontaneous movement. Well, the cell, again, uses a transport protein to do this. But now the cell is going to have to expend energy, typically expend ATP to make this happen since it's non-spontaneous. So in this case, the transport protein would grab an ATP molecule and using the energy in that ATP, that's how it would power the movement of the solute against its concentration gradient. And that sort of transport is called active transport, or they sometimes informally refer to it as pumping of the solute. In many cases, the ATP provides the energy for the active transport. In other instances, there's something called an electron transport system. Electron transport system is molecules, or are molecules in the cell membrane that can carry electrons, high energy electrons, to the transport protein. Using the energy of those high energy electrons, that powers the active transport protein. Sound vaguely familiar? Kind of? Okay. Well, let's see. The topic we finished off last time was related to membranes and solutes, but wasn't exactly active or passive transport. What we finished up on last time was a topic called osmosis. And to introduce that, I showed you this slide just to remind you that water is attracted to solute molecules. That's what makes those solutes hydrophilic, is that they're attracted to the water and the water is attracted to them. For solutes that are ions, you can easily see what the attraction is. For negative ions, the partially negative hydrogens, the partially positive hydrogens in the water molecule is attracted to them electrostatically. And for the positively charged ions, like the sodium, the partially negative oxygens of the water is going to be drawn to them. So you'll have them coming together by electrostatic attraction. And even if the solutes are not ions, but have partial charges, that's good enough. The water will still be attracted to them, again, electrostatically. The partial positive hydrogens will be attracted to the partial negative oxygen here, and the partial negative oxygen in the water will be attracted to this partial positive hydrogen there, that sort of thing. So solutes are magnets for water molecules is the big picture there. Okay, now imagine a cell membrane, and the blue and yellow molecules are the water molecules, and there you have some sodium ions, but it really could be any sort of solute particle there. Well, the membrane's very hydrophobic, so it's a barrier to the solutes passing through. So the sodiums, even if they're at a high concentration on this side, can't escape and move out here. Even though they want to diffuse in that direction, they can't. But the water molecules can move through cell membranes. And so what's going to happen is, well, these solutes are going to attract the water molecules like you see there, but they're also going to attract the water molecules on the other side of the membrane. And since water molecules can go through cell membranes, some of those water molecules are going to pass through the cell membrane and go to the side that has all those solutes on it. Now, maybe if you were, as you were just watching that, you're saying, wait a minute, how can the water get through the cell membrane? And it should strike you as a little bit weird because water is a hydrophilic molecule. It's polar, it mixes with water, water mixes with water, and so it meets our criteria of being hydrophilic. And so the water molecules really have no business being able to pass through a cell membrane. So how can they do that? Well, it's something that I'm still kind of struggling with concept-wise, but even if I can't totally come to terms with it, it definitely does happen. The water can easily pass through all cell membranes. And so for that reason, they sometimes describe cell membranes as selectively permeable, meaning that water can cross the membrane, but the solutes can't. So given the fact that water will go through cell membranes, and it will always go through the cell membrane towards whichever side has the higher solute concentration, because the solutes are attracting the waters, we have this little sound bite here, water follows solutes. And that's really a way of summarizing this concept that's called osmosis. The principle of osmosis says that water will always move across the cell membranes, which are selectively permeable, towards whichever side is the highest solute concentration, because that's where the highest attraction to the water molecules is going to be. So here's an example. Well, here's a cell, and all cells have solutes inside them, dissolved in the cytoplasm. And I'm going to represent those dissolved solutes as just these little dots there. What exact molecules are they inside the cell? Well, pretty much all the substances we've been talking about so far this semester. Some of those are going to be the common ions of living things, like sodium ions and potassium ions and chloride ions. Some of those dots represent the monomers, like amino acids and monosaccharides, glycerol, nucleotides. Some of those solute dots inside the cell represent polymers, like macromolecules, like enzymes, carbohydrate polymers, that sort of thing. Now, you don't have to know the exact concentration of solutes inside a cell, but just in case you're wondering, for almost all cells, the total solute concentration inside is about 0.3 moles of solutes per liter of solution. And like I said, I'm never going to ask you that on a test, but just in case you want a number to associate it with, that's about the total solute concentration inside a typical cell.